Welcome back, everyone, and we are going to now go through and dimension the length of each and every line. So, for instance, we need to know that this particular line is 74 feet long, and we are going 0 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds east of south, and we're going to be going all the way around. So, what we're going to find is that Civil 3D happens to be incredibly efficient at this. So we're going to be working on the Annotate tab, and on the Annotate tab, the far left command is Add Labels. So in Civil 3D drafting, and we haven't even gotten to the engineering part yet, but in drafting, each of these, what I'm going to use the term dimensions, are considered labels. The lengths of lines are labeled with their bearing and distance. And it is most common to put the bearing over the line that we're labeling and the distance under the line that we're labeling. So let's notice that on this wall we can see that there is no bearing over the distance. It's just a distance. So why is that? That's because there's one main label up here that's above the line that is larger, which is indicating that all the way from the previous label above the line, so from this point here up to the end of this straight line, which is here, is all at this particular angle. So that entire line is straight north, and it's 1,320 feet. And if the entire line is straight north, then we don't need to duplicate the bearing on each individual parcel here. Okay, so there's some different styles, but here's what we're going to see. When we go to label a line, we don't actually, in our most efficient manner, we don't actually label the line. We ask Civil to label every object that is included in the boundary around this particular parcel. And here's how this works. Using our add label command, and by the way, there's two areas to this command, a top area and an alternate area, which brings up a drop down. I'm going to suggest we just want to select this top area, which is the basic command, and it brings up a dialog box. And this, of all dialog boxes in Civil 3D, is probably the most useful. So, what feature do we want to label? We want to label a parcel. What type of label do we want to put in? We want multiple segments. And where Civil 3D sees a line, we want a bearing over distance label. And where there's a curve, we want a label called delta over length and radius. And we'll talk about that later. Just go with me for now. So I'm going to click Add now because I want to add specific labels. So Add, and all I need to do is click on the property label and tell Civil 3D, do I want my labels to go clockwise around or counterclockwise around this parcel? And quite frankly, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that as I label my project, I'm consistent. So I'm going to choose clockwise. I choose clockwise and I get 4 lines labeled. I come up here, choose clockwise, and I don't get 4 lines this time. I get 1, 2, 3. Civil is smart enough to know that this bottom line is already labeled and doesn't need a repeat. So here's how this goes. Boom, clockwise, boom, clockwise, boom, clockwise, boom, clockwise, boom, clockwise, boom, clockwise. You can see a repeating theme here. And I think I'll get my castle. And I think I'll get these 4 in here. And then I'll probably stop. And then we're going to clean some stuff up. Alright. So if I zoom in on this lower area, you can see each curve has its own label as well. And they're kind of a disaster. And we're going to take care of those later. So now I'm going to close this label box. I'm going to go back and kind of start cleaning up some labels. So I'm going to close this. And notice on this line I have the bearing over distance. But in this label, Revit Civil 3D kind of messed it up. And it has distance over bearing. So I'm going to select this label. And in my modify area, I can simply flip this label. And it's now bearing over distance and reads as it should. So what I'm going to do now is just simply kind of click through a bunch of these labels that are upside down and flip them all at once. So I've cleaned that up. Here's another one of those I need to flip. And you can kind of start to see why I'm reticent to do an entire project, because it becomes overwhelmingly unclear. But if I do 10 or 15 parcels at a time, I can see better what I want to change. So I'm now going to flip all of these. And let's see where else I need to flip. These 3 here. Looks like this one up here. And the others tend to look okay, so I'll flip those. Let's continue on up. I'm going to flip this one. And I'm going to totally ignore my curves. Flip all of these. They look good. I'll flip these. Those look okay. I'll flip them. And I think I have fixed my bearing over distance issues, except for these over here. So I'm going to actually make an attempt to change what style label this is. So I'm going to click on the label itself and change its style. And I'm going to come over here and say I just want distance. So now I just have distance. So now I'm going to get efficient and choose all of these up here. Let's see, and that one as well. And it changed them at one time to just distance. And while they're still all selected, I'm going to flip them. And now my distances are all below the line as I want. So you can see, oops, dang it. Let's see, undo, select just this one label and flip it, and there we go. So things are cleaning up pretty quickly here. Again, I'm absolutely going to ignore my curves. They are a mess, and we'll talk about what we're going to do with those later. So I think I'm going to move up here, and I'm going to pause this for a minute and take a little mental survey of the PDF and come back, and we will, I think, be working more on these property labels.